Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to the LJL officially unofficially official. It's some order of the way those phrases work.
Something to do with the LJL.
Something like that. Welcome back to our coverage of the LJL Academy League for our final game of day 3. My name is Middlecott, joined once again by Recollect, as we are going to be breaking down for you Detention, FocusMe versus Burning Core Academy squads. Now, recollect, both of these teams have picked up a win today, so must be riding pretty high. Is there anyone that you're looking at to take this one?
Well, the big one is just the importance of their wins, right? And to me, the Burning Core win was more significant because when we look at the teams that they were playing against, I feel as though CGA kind of is known to be pretty solid at this point. They're pretty much one of the best teams, and Axis is very hot and cold, so I feel like they came in a little bit cold into the DFM series. So at least to me, looking at the way in which they won their last series, I mean, you've just got to give it to BC, right? They look so good. Burning Core was looking really strong in their matchup. I mean, Creative had quite a few solid sort of performances throughout that game, and I feel as though that is going to be the key talking point in this game. Is going to be in that mid lane matchup, because at least to me, when I think of Burning Core, I think of Creative, and when I think of Detention, FocusMe, Academy, I think of Ree.
Yeah, definitely strong players in their own right. I think we need to give a shout out though to Marimo in the bot lane. Had a absolutely ridiculous performance in Ezreal on Ezreal last time out, and then Nasuti as well. Had a dominant game on the Jinjiao, was ATCS up at one point, was the highest level in the game as a jungler at one point as well, which is honestly unheard of a lot of the time. So I feel like we're starting to get those real star players emerging from this DFM Academy side where we didn't necessarily see them before.
Yeah, and we're not even mentioning the Kennen flanks found from Van, right? That the Slicing Maelstroms were such a massive factor within their fighting wins that they were able to gain to get them the win that they ended up picking up. So the whole team, as you say, is starting to come through and start to show their potential. And as you say, I think Nasuti is kind of the point that we need to mention as well, is the fact that his early games are pretty strong. And for this team to gain advantage, it comes from the jungler. That is how they get their advantages. And whilst he doesn't carry later on down the line as such, he gets the other members to the point where they can carry. But to me, it's a very interesting spot to see how they're going to play in this game, because whilst the dive style worked to an extent, I don't feel as though they played it perfectly in the last situation. And in fact, I think there were a couple of mistakes from the opposite team which enabled them to find the access they needed to find, because the Kennen was able to find access very easily. I think specifically against the Alistar that can usually, knock people away and you can't enter a fight. And to me, the fact that they weren't playing Bodyguard versus Kennen was a major factor in the win for Detonation FocusMe. On the flip side, though, it must be said that I think Burning Core had some help as well in the fact that their opponents didn't want to play their composition.
Yeah, I mean, that's always something that you've got to happen. For every throw, there has to be someone there to catch it. Whilst it necessarily wasn't a throw in the traditional sense where you're just making some ridiculously sus play, again, there wasn't really that same playing towards the composition that you would have liked to see. Interestingly for Burning Core, that they did opt for this a bit more multi-carry threat composition with the Camille, Viego, Azir, Tristana, and the Leona. So they're giving themselves multiple options in draft. If anyone gets ahead on their team, they seem to be fairly confident in playing through them. We are going to be jumping into the pick and ban phase though for our final game of the day. DFM on the blue side, Burning Core on the red, Irelia and Akali off the board.
Yeah, and I'm expecting to see that Diana ban come through pretty quickly as well, because realistically that Diana-Yasuo combo is so powerful for the side of Burning Core. They've shown a decent amount of priority on it as well, so not expecting to see that one allowed again. And I think this is going to be a really interesting game in general, because I expect to see a lot of fighting, a decent amount of scrapping, and there is the Yasuo ban, so instead, prioritizing that one a little bit over the Diana itself. This does mean, though, that Viego is open, Xin Zhao is open. There's quite a few jungle options here on the table.
Yeah, there's also quite a few mid lane options though. Even though that ball has been focused out by DFM, Creative has shown that he's the sort of guy that is willing to play anything. Couple games on Yasuo, game on Cassiopeia, and on Azir. As champions all have sort of different ways that you want to play them out, but are very focused on getting this DPS as we get later into the game. We see the Aphelios and the LeBlanc removed now, so DFM looking to secure themselves a strong pick in this first rotation. I think the Xin Zhao would be making a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be the Xin Zhao or the Viego I'm expecting, and the Xin Zhao does come through here, as you mentioned, for Detonation. FocusMe. And on the flip side, I feel like Burning Core, they have a few options on the table. I personally would like to see them go the Viego route, as I think that honestly, you know, the Diana, it's not as strong if you don't have decent follow-up tools available, whereas the Viego, a lot of scaling and Flourish can play it very solidly earlier on today, in fact, so you know, I wouldn't be surprised to see that picked up, and in fact it is. So far, kind of what we're expecting, which is rare to me for these drafts. Yeah, the Leona again, we've seen that played as well before, so far all on theme.
Yeah, and then if DFM lock in the Brawl Mash here, it's a lot of standard stuff, but it will actually be the Kennen going towards Van in the top lane. Had a very good performance on it, like we already alluded to in their game earlier today. But this does mean that if Creative locks in an ADC for Akabuff, then Burning Core could look to pinch that pool.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one as well, because there's about 3 AD carries that are decently high in the priority right now. It's the Ezreal, the Varus, and the Kai'Sa. So realistically, I don't think Burning Core needed to pick it yet, and as such, they take the top lane. The thought process here, I think, is you can ban 2 AD carries and just get your pick of the litter, assuming that DFM does not ban any AD carries. But either way, you can adjust your pick ban, you know, in the last couple of picks anyway, to guarantee yourself that you get an AD carry selection of your choice, as you can always facilitate whether or not there are 2 AD carry bans or not.
As we see the Syndra removed, it's interesting that they've opted to not take a mid laner for Creative. I've been getting used to seeing him picking up one of his wacky champions on that R3 slot, but instead, obviously, that Camille going towards Yellow Yoshi, one of our multitude of Camille players in this tournament. Like you mentioned, if Burning Core leave a few of the AD carries up, they will be able to pick those for themselves. Interesting to see the Kassadin ban, though, from DFM. I feel like mid lane is going to be the heavy focus for both of these teams.
Yeah, the Kassadin can have a couple of reasons behind it. They could be expecting a heavy AP-based mid laner that can... or rather, they're expecting to play an AP mid laner with sort of an awkward matchup into the Kassadin itself, potentially something along the lines of, I think, the Cassia we've seen it banned against a couple of times. But to me, I feel like there's a little bit of an issue, and that's the fact that Ziggs, never mind, just got banned. Good stuff from DFM to realize that Akabuff's enjoyment of that champion. But I think with Ezreal open, you just have to take Ezreal here on the side of Burning Core, because if you give that to DFM, they're going to be pretty happy with what they've got for themselves. So I'm expecting the Ezreal to come through here, though you can still take the Kai'Sa and be pretty happy.
Could take the Kai'Sa or the Tristana, which we saw Akabuff play earlier today. Will be the Yordle Gunner lucked in for them. So leaving counterpick for Creative until their final pick. Now DFM will need to respond with their ADC and mid laner respectively.
Yeah, and I mean, the Tristana makes a lot of sense in another aspect, which is the fact that it's still technically a flex pick towards the mid lane, right? You can pair this into a lot of solid mid lane matchup options, and as such, you got to be a bit careful now what you draft here. The standard is the Cassio is something you can run with the Syndra ban, so that might be another doubling down reason onto that Kassadin ban. Kog'Maw, I like it in theory, but I feel like it's really hard to execute here unless you are really playing well as a coordinated team.
And the Orianna locked in as well. I feel like that's not too unexpected for Ree here. Blind picking something like the Akali can be risky, although we have seen DFM do that before, but the Orianna has many more favourable matchups and can kind of just go neutral in a lot of scenarios. But the Silas is left available, and I'm seeing some pretty good R buttons on DFM to steal away. Yeah,
I guess the idea here is mostly going to be playing towards that slicing maelstrom online, because Silas likes to get in the middle of things and get in the thick of it. And I feel like the biggest issue I was going to mention with this Kog'Maw pickup is look at the composition that's been picked up here for Burning Core. It feels like all of them are going to be jumping towards you in some manner. And is there enough peel really to keep this Kog'Maw alive? It's just Brom and maybe some AoE CC in Shockwave and the Slicing Maelstrom. So to me, I think it's very difficult to play Kog'Maw in this game. Even in lane to an extent, it's going to be rough.
Yeah, and we saw that from the Poppy pick in the previous game for Rascal Jester. Yeah, theoretically, it matches up quite well into what your enemy wants to do. But if there's so much dive, like has been drafted on the side of Burning Core,
Yeah.
there's so much dive on Burning Core, but it becomes a lot more difficult to protect this Kog'Maw in the same way that you would want to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's just talk a little bit about how this composition is going to end up functioning, right, from the opposition. It's the fact that the Camille and this Leona can both find pretty consistent access onto something like the Kog'Maw. The Hexic Ultimatum lockup with the Solar Flare is a deadly combo in terms of crowd control. And then Viego, Silas, Tristana dealing damage. I mean, it's hard to fend from a couple of these, but if you try and counter into the Tristana with the rest of your composition, she can survive pretty easily against these champions. I mean, Buster Shot versus Kennen is pretty much one of the best abilities in the game for self-peel in that specific scenario, and no one else can really get into the backline. So to me, front-to-back team fights for this composition of DFM aren't actually going to function very well. And at the same time, I feel like it's so much easier for BC to actually get the fights they want, as well as to set up split push threats later on down the line. I feel as though unless DFM gets a massive advantage with this Xin Ori early on and transition that to bot side, they're going to have a lot of problems.
I mean, there is always that wombo combo potential. You could just see it in your mind's eye, where you've got the Shockwave into the Slicing Maelstrom. You catch out Akabuff, Creative Floor, Yellow Yoshi, all in the middle of those sorts of Venn diagrams of death. And they just pop and explode, and you win the team fight. But I have to agree with you, that feels like it's a lot less of a likely scenario. And DFM will need to generate a significant lead early on in the game if they want to get towards these later team fights and actually execute. But the issue is, Kog'Maw, traditionally not the strongest champion in the early game. Orianna, whilst her laning is good, her skirmishing can leave a little bit left to be desired. And I can imagine that we just get to a point where DFM can't really do anything.
Yeah, it's a difficult one because their whole composition relies upon Kog'Maw being allowed to free hit. And to do that, you need a couple of things. Yeah. First of all, you need a front to back, so you need to have distance from the enemy. Second, you need crowd control to lock them in place. And third, you need distractions to make sure that he isn't the main focus. And realistically speaking, if we go down the list of those, well, the first thing is, do you have crowd control to lock him down? Not really. You've got Shockwave and Slicing Maelstrom, that's it, really. Unless you count Glacial Fissure, which I don't really. If you then think about how they function, Kennen just gets ulted by Tristana every fight.
Yeah.
And there's no ball delivery system for Orianna. So you're doing Shockwaves essentially without setup, which can work, but it's inefficient and it's inconsistent. So it's difficult, right? If you can find those fights, great. But you're basically praying that Akabuff doesn't know how to press R every fight. And that's difficult.
It's not a reliable strategy, depending on your opponent making mistakes. And Akabuff has been consistently one of the better ADCs, I feel, in this tournament so far. DFM did go for a little bit of a 5-stack towards that bot lane, but spotted out by Burning Core. Get some shallow vision, but it's a nice response from Floor and Yellow Yoshi to get this ward on the top side blue.
I can say though that strategy works depending on your elo, so don't be don't be surprised if you enter your enter silver games and you're able to pull that one off. But yeah, the vision setup here is nice. I don't necessarily agree with the decision though to split map topside for the side of BC. I think shutting down this Kog'Maw just means that DFM's comp can no longer play the game. So maybe just setting up to dive that repeatedly for Floor would have been a little bit more efficient. But it's fine. I mean, they get themselves knowledge of where the enemy jungler is starting due to the lack of vision on their blue. And it means that now you can set up the vertical jungle to punish this Kennen and give yourself a 1-4 split instead. But in this particular situation, would prefer to shut down the enemy win condition.
Yeah. I mean, but you do have that flash available on Yellow Yoshi. Hasn't opted for the Ignite. So in terms of getting onto the Kennen, I feel like it's going to be a lot easier. And Blitzcrank bot, well, he's having a little bit of a disagreement with you, Recollect. Really heavily in favor of DFM's composition. 57% is pretty impressive. So
I guess I don't know what I'm talking about. What can I say?
It's a battle of man versus machine. You see there at the 33 and 36 minute mark, Burning Core just going to completely wipe out this game.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to wait and see on that one. I must confess, I do not necessarily agree, but we will see what ends up happening. And at the same time, you know, BC does have some issues, because if they do end up getting dived here, they're in a really nasty situation, because their bot lane can't actually survive the dive early particularly well if they get hit by the concussive blows from the Brom. But in the meantime, you know, they'll be okay provided they don't die to the early dive. And you know, with this map state being split like this, you can at least guarantee your jungler does get themselves that top crab because of the nature of the priority. So being able to split in that regard does have some benefits for the side of Burning Core.
I'll tell you what though, with the way that Nasiti was cutting away from that Raptor camp, it looks like he may be heading towards the top side of the map himself. And with the pressure that Rhea has got in the mid lane, definitely something that the Xin Zhao can pressure towards. We talked about Marimo needing to be set behind on this Xin Zhao, but it looks like that isn't happening, as Floor has found Nasuti in the river, but is able to take away that Scuttle Crab. And yeah, we talked about Marimo needing to get set behind on this Cogmore. He's currently 25 CS up, and Burning Core not really able to do anything too much about that, as DFM's bot lane are going aggressive onto Akabuff, down to 200 HP, and they're getting lane priority on a pick where you wouldn't necessarily expect it.
Yeah, the problem is that the Brom matchup into the owner is very strong. If you can land that concussive blows onto either member, it becomes very difficult to do anything, but Rhea might be getting caught out here.
Oh, Spectrumore comes out, not flashed away from, as the Blade of the Ruined King followed through by Floor. The flash chain lash not landing, and Nasuti will be looking to be the benefactor. Neither flash available for this Burning Core squad, as Creative goes back in with the Kingslayer, but will be slain himself. Regicide committed by Rhea as he picks up first blood.
Yeah, DFM ends up picking that one up for themselves, and Rhea being able to survive very well there, only having to blow his flash in exchange for 2 flashes from the enemy. And unfortunately, Creative does get punished from not quite hitting that chain, and it does end up costing him his life. And that's going to have massive implications here as well. It means now that the bot lane situation is going to be even worse, because you can no longer get priority because of that early sort of kill being given over to the Orianna, meaning she's now even stronger in the lane state. And as we see the replay here, Creative does just take sort of this little trade here onto Rhea, trying to punish the fact that the teleport was just blown and you have teleport advantage yourself. But then Floor goes a little bit more for it, hits that Spectral more. I feel like it's so close, but you're not quite in range, my friend. Flash Q is just short, and I respect the attempt, but now here comes trouble, because Nasuti comes in, realizes, hey, I can absolutely do whatever I want here, and the Silas can't really go in, tries to anyway, and goodbye, friend.
Yeah, I feel like Creative was imagining that Nasuti was just in tower range, but not quite the case. A couple of hits from that structure would have taken down the Xin Zhao, but it wasn't the case. As it stands, it's Detonation FocusMe kind of winning out all across the map. Kill advantage in the mid lane, CS advantage in top, and bot lane has been going from bad to worse for Akabuff. 30 CS advantage for Marimo.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of what happens if you leave this matchup in isolation. This is why I mentioned the fact that split mapping is kind of awkward for BC, because at the same time you need to shut the Cogmore down, but in isolation, the Cogmore Brom can do whatever they want, because if Leona goes in, great, she gets stunned, she dies, or at least takes a decent chunk. If Tristana goes in, great, she gets chunked.
Oh, if Creative goes in, he might be able to take down Rhea. Huge damage onto the Orianna, as that's a kill traded back for Burning Core.
Yeah, they needed that one badly. They do end up punishing Ree for that mistake, going in aggressively there onto Creative, and it's nice to give that kill over to Creative to help give him a little bit of oomph back into this lane, shall we say. But the problems are elsewhere, realistically. It's this bot side situation. It's, to an extent, the top side isn't too bad, but we will see the replay here, and it's a nice shockwave initially that comes through here from Creative, and it means now that Ree is just caught in no man's land, and you get the shockwave back, cool, but it doesn't do anything, so it's just ultimate straight.
Yeah, it's fairly cut and dry, just what Silas can do if you ever overstep in that lane. Yellow Yoshi taking a fair bit of his health bar in trade, but as this wave pushes into Van, he'll just be backing away from that. Doesn't want a million range creeps firing onto his ass. DFM have put themselves in a good position in this early game. The Drake is on the table, and I'd imagine with the continual advantages they're finding themselves in this bot lane, going to be soon to fall in their favor.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a horrible state here for the side of BC. They kind of are just being left out to dry at this point. It's like, don't worry, guys, I'll help everyone else and we'll win that way, is the mentality here for Florin. I can understand it. You're playing through your strong points, and that's why we do see this lane gank attempt here. No real camps to farm, and Nasuti might have gone to the top side, so we might see a little 2v2 action.
Yeah, has aggroed that Rift Herald, but smells something going on. Burning Core have spotted this one out, and Floor, so we're just waiting around for stuff to occur as Fujimoto makes his way into the top side, and somehow nothing's gone down. Van forced to flash back, but Yellow Yoshi has gone way too aggressive, forced to Hextech ultimatum away. Nasuti will be falling down. No! Gets the trade kill back onto Yellow Yoshi as Floor is in the middle of everyone, able to dash forward, gets the kill onto Van. He's starting to reset on the Viego, baby. The lightning rush away, but it will not save his life. Kennen kills Kennen as it's a trader kills at the top side.
That was so close from Floor. I love the attempt there. Almost got out, but the tower was just enough to catch him out. And it's mechanically played so well there from the Viego side. But at the meantime, Creative.
Oh, Marimo stepping very far forward on this Kog'Maw. Maybe a little bit overconfident, but with Fujimoto in the area, is able to back him up. Interesting swap into the mid lane. What are DFM looking to grab with this?
Well, I think the idea is they preemptively swap towards the mid lane so that they could be there for the Herald, but we'll talk about that in a moment because here is that top lane play again from earlier. Yellow Yoshi just sort of baiting, and I feel like at this point when the Camille runs at you, you know something's up. Yeah. But Van Respect flashes away, and it looks pretty well played. But look at the damage that comes through onto Nasuti. It looks as if nothing happened, and it suddenly is so low, and Floor lands that W. It's crucial to catch out Van, and unfortunately does end up going down because tanks an extra tower shot on the minions, help out a little bit, and it means that it is all 2 for 2 overall in the top side, but the time that was bought is key towards that bot side.
Yeah, the 30 CS lead hasn't been improved on too much, has just remained. Nickel will be happy to get a little bit more gold onto this Camille and the Viego, who can turn into big threats in the side lane. Currently a threat to this side lane of Yellow Yoshi is the rest of DFM, as Fujimoto and Netsuti are in the area, but the control ward spots them and they'll just back away as Burning Core look to pressure towards the mid lane. It's going to be the Rift Herald started up by DFM. What can Burning Core get on the other side of the map?
Yeah, likely just going to end up trading that one off, get themselves the dragon in exchange, and Akabuff going to potentially be looking to get that second plate now. I believe that was a solo plate beforehand as well, so catching up a little bit in terms of gold thanks to that plate money, even if they are still quite a bit behind. But Kog'Maw in isolation is still a Kog'Maw, and Floor is looking.
Does have cleanse, does have flash, does have friends on his back. Van TPing in, Slicing Maelstrom available, but he doesn't choose to use it. Rift Herald was picked up in the meanwhile by Nasuti, and because that dive didn't pay off, Burning Core will be forced to walk back towards this Drake. No real contest coming out from DFM, so it just ends up being a trade of objectives across the map.
Yeah, Nasuti currently in the top lane catching that wave, so isn't really in position to try and contest the dragon as of yet. And Burning Core, as you say, unfortunately not able to pick up the kill onto the Kog'Maw, but they will happily take the TP from Van to give them that global advantage now.
Suti trading aggressively onto Yellow Yoshi, who hookshot wall dives back in. TP from Creative. No flash on the Jinjiao. Ults him back with a Crescent Guard, but the flash fall from Silas is just enough. The Shockwave is late, but it's just in time to take down Yellow Yoshi. Ends up being a 1-for-1 trade overall.
Yeah, 1-for-1, but both mid laners now blowing TP, so overall I think this is good for the side of Burning Core. Trading bot side here, but Burning Core don't want any of that.
Will be the half-bound axe in inventory for Marimo, so going towards this Wit's End, which we've seen as such a high priority item, but there's not a lot of magic damage on Burning Core. The Zenith Blaze goes right from Bakote, but Floor doesn't give a damn Akabuff, jumping forward with the rocket jump. DFM's bot lane forced to back away. So with this Wit's End itemization, we're not going to see that though, as here is the top lane fight.
Yeah, I mean, Nasuti does just feel as though they're a little bit stronger than the Camille, and to an extent, I do agree. It's definitely not weak by any stretch of the imagination, but you have to consider once Xinjiao blows all of that, there's not a whole lot else, and with the TP coming through, Nasuti now caught in between a rock and a hard place. The Exec Ultimatum locks him up, but Ree notices they're close together, punishes, Yellow Yoshi goes down, and it's just a 1-for-1 overall. But remember, Creative still has his teleport Yellow Yoshi, sorry, already still has his teleport available, so a global play towards the dragon when it spawns is still going to be pretty good for the side of PC.
Oh, that ward in the DFM's side tri-brush did just expire, as the Herald was used towards the bot lane to get a little bit more gold towards Marimo's Cogmore. Is starting to scale up and will be grabbing that Wit's End very soon. Meanwhile, Burning Core looking to move towards the top side of the map. Well, hoping to pick up this Rift Scuttler before his mid lane takes it away, as we'll take down the control ward as well. It's all slowed down a little bit. DFM did get that early advantage, but with the plates falling in 30 seconds time, haven't really pushed it too much.
Yeah, I mean, the gold being less than 1,000 at this point in the game, considering the way that the bot lane state was going earlier. Well, I mean, that's just sad, isn't it?
It's just not. I mean, it's fair enough. It's his blue buff.
I mean,
fundamentally, Floor was committing an act of larceny, an act of theft there, and the CT walks down the stairs with her ace ball bat and smites away the blue buff. So I think it's fair enough.
I think that theft is. Oh, hang on.
Theft is pretty good if your name's Creative, stealing away the Shockwave, but it won't be long before he falls down. Nasuti picks up his second kill of the game, starting to do bits on the Xinjiao. He's got a kill participation advantage and a CS advantage as Marimo really starting to flex those Bio-Arcane Barrage walls for attacks.
Yeah, unfortunately therefore the side of Creative does end up going down thanks to Nasuti being in the area, and it's a little bit I'll just say it's a little bit greedy to sort of be in that situation, but does get punished rightfully so from the side of DFM. And DFM, as I was saying, it was below 1,000 gold. They've started to increment that gold lead, but it feels as though the plays haven't necessarily been as frequent as they could be considering their strength. But Fujimoto,
looking forward, did land the Winter's Bite, but timeout as Nasuti has made his way into the bot lane. It's level 10, by the way. Level up on Floor, same level as Yellow, Yoshi, and Van. So very good work on the Xinjiao. Just backs away, maybe anticipating the counter gank potential as Floor is making his way towards the top side of the map. Creative cheating that way as well, but Diego has been spotted on a control ward, will not clear it out. So Cloud Drake spawning in 40 seconds, held up in a minute's time. We did see that DFM were able to pick up the first one, use it bot lane to get a little bit more gold onto Marimo with those tower plates, but crucially, no one has actually knocked down a structure as of yet. You are able to pick up Shirley, gives you a couple more tools to get that first brick.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you can get that first sort of turret, you can set up the vision, you can start adjusting your lane assignments around the objectives, and from there you can start snowball the game. And that's kind of the big thing for the side of DFM, is that whilst they have got late game scaling aspects in the Cogmore, the threats on the enemy team also scale up, and at that point the ratio is whether or not you want your damage versus assassination potential to increase with game time. And to me, I think around 20-25 minutes is about as far as you want a game to go, because realistically the later you go, the more danger there is to the Cogwall. Because everyone else can start one-shotting him. Because realistically speaking, itemization for Cogwall isn't necessarily the tankiest. It's the Wit's End with the shield bow, but the rest of it is just attack speed. There isn't a whole lot of tankiness generally, but Creative gets shockwaved.
He lands the Everfrost onto Ree, though, as Nasuti is actually the target. Exhaust onto him. That's a good Glacial Fissure to disengage the fight, as Floor is a little bit caught out. Shuriken doesn't land from Van, so no chance to get the stun, as Yellow Yoshi, meanwhile, just destroying structures in the top lane, trading back for the one that DFM grabbed earlier. Now, with that Drake falling for the blue side team as well, they've rotated multiple members, actually all 5 towards this Herald, and we'll be looking to pick this one up as well.
Yeah, and the argument can always be made about Tristana not moving for this, but the fight is going to break out because Silas TPing.
Well, TPs are starting to come through. DFM, they are in a choke point, but Burning Core can't get the access. They're able to just walk it out with that Rift Herald picked up, but have ceded mid lane priority. Burning Core could look to grab their second tower of the game in this mid side.
The question that has to be asked here, though, is how much do you actually care about this Herald going down as Burning Core if Tristana sits bot lane? Because realistically speaking, the turret plates are gone, so you're not getting any gold from that.
Yeah.
The Rift Herald itself is worth 50 gold, I think, if I'm remembering correctly.
Something like
that. It's not much. It's very little.
Not a lot. Not a lot.
Whereas Tristana lost a double stack wave, I think, bot lane just now, in exchange for rotating here. Realistically speaking, the gold income you're going to generate by, the Herald on average is nowhere near as much as that double stack wave would have been. So realistically speaking, I think if BC just went towards the bot lane, picked up the wave, and just give the Herald, you're fine with that. As long as you can defend the Herald play reasonably, in terms of maybe losing one turret, but even then you probably don't lose mid tower because of the HP on it.
Yeah.
I feel as though they could have been in a much better state in terms of gold than they are right now because of the play they made.
Well, and the thing is as well, it's not like DFM would have had a Drake to play around in a second time, as Van is going aggressive onto Yellow Yoshi, punishing his engage. Hextech Ultimatum dropped onto the Kennen, Flash forced away by the Camille.
Yeah, it's just over-aggressive there from Yellow Yoshi. There's no vision set up on the bot side at all. It's completely dark. You can't be playing aggressively like that. I mean, where is the wards for the red side in that quadrant? There is nothing at all.
No.
Nothing in River, nothing in the Raptors, nothing in the red buff, nothing at the Crocs. So you don't actually know anything, and as such, going aggressive like that is just 9 times out of 10 in competitive play gonna get punished because someone is going to be there to punish it.
Yeah, flash burn from the Camille. As Van did use the Slicing Maelstrom, which means diving the Kennen is a little bit easier, forced to flash back there. So, ends up being a long trade of summoner spells, but with Burning Core committing multiple members to the bottom side of the map, the FM converging on the mid lane, still have that Herald in pocket, could look to take down this tower.
Yeah, instead they're just going to be taking away these topside camps because Floor was away for so long, so the Raptors are just a freebie, setting up vision for that Baron, but the Infernal Dragon is spawning in a minute and a half, and I feel like for the side of DFM, they're just going to wait on the Herald spawn for about 30 seconds for the Dragon, push it mid, get the tower, and then they can rotate down to the bot side using that little bit of tempo they've got to start the objective.
Or they're going to summon it top lane a minute before the Drake spawns, so they don't have that pressure in the mid side.
Yeah, that seems significantly better. Yep. Okay. I clearly know nothing, and I'm sorry for my fake news analysis. But fine. Instead we prefer the top lane outer tower for the macro rotation instead of mid tower, because who needs vision? It's unnecessary. But what it does mean is you get a little bit of extra gold income to so Xin Zhao can get himself his second item.
Yes.
Which is an interesting pickup. I don't know how standard that is for Xin Zhao. I won't lie.
There's a lot of healing on the enemy team. You've got the Silas, you've got the Camille, and the Viego as well. Yeah. So cutting that a little bit does feel good. You are quite accelerated if you are Nasuti, so maybe you can afford to go for a couple of these luxury purchases. Actually has the most gold out of anyone in the game.
Yeah, so, I don't know. The only issue I have with it really is that when I think about what Xin Zhao should be doing in fights, I feel like it's going to be primarily on the Tristana, right? Who isn't feeling much, but TP.
Ooh, TP coming through into the back line by Yellow-Yoshi. Solar Flare landing onto Fujimoto. Not necessarily the target that you want. And now the Camille is getting kited away from. Marimo is oh so strong on this Kog'Maw as the Jin Jiao dives forward into the Spectral Maw from floor, but kicks up the kill onto Picote with ease. Forces the Heartbreaker away over the wall. And now Burning Core don't really have an angle. Shockwave isn't available yet for Riaz. That is slowly ticking down off cooldown. But Floor is making his way into the area, and Burning Core, they look like they're just giving this one up. Second Drake going over to DFM. Definitely not game breaking, but nice stats to have. Burning Core may have stayed a little bit here in the mid lane. Fujimoto lands the Winter's Bite onto Creative. Nasuti is making his way around. This is a long chase from DFM. It doesn't look like it's going to pan out for Akabuff as he's forced to rocket jump away.
Yeah, it feels as though for the side of Burning Core, the engage was really desynced. It felt like the Camille goes in, everyone else is sort of meandering to try and enter the fight, and it means that Marino doesn't actually get flanked, just turns on the flanker, but might be another attempt here.
Oh, here goes Creative. Doesn't land the chains going into the backline. Here comes Picote. Those are a couple of very nice slicing maelstroms from both sides, but it's going in favor of DFM. 3 kills, 4 kills, double kill for Ree as Akabuff is forced to run. They don't even care about him, though, as they have got the Baron set in their sights.
Yeah, something's gone heavily wrong there. If the Kog'Maw is full HP at the end of a team fight, Marimo is basically untouched, only got hit by the Solar Flare, I think, the entire fight, and whilst it looks pretty to have both those Slicing Nostrums on top of each other, Creatives didn't actually find the key carry that it needed to, and at the same time, no one found access onto the Kog'Maw, and we'll take a look here, and as you can see, Creative, he tries to find the flash engage here, but doesn't hit it onto Van, and just keep an eye on Marimo, just completely untouched. No one is even close to him, and at the same time, the Orianna is doing damage, and you know, if these situations are allowed where neither of the carries are really being focused in a team fight, there's no way the side Rocket Core are going to take the win.
Yeah, that's not really how you play a dive comp. You don't want to be diving onto the Jin Jiao and the Braum. You want to be diving onto the Orianna and the Kog'Maw. Didn't come out from BC, and they paid a very heavy price for it. Not only losing the team fight, but losing that Baron. Now DFM sat with a 5k gold advantage. Will be taking down this mid lane tower in short order. The last of the outers to go down, and they're in a pretty commanding position right now.
Yeah, I mean, the robo-analyst clearly has just outmatched me in this one. Fully aware of the power of this Kog'Maw composition, and you know, the Kog'Maw is remaining untouched, which is the key thing I was worried about, is the fact that, you know, if he does get hit by anything, it can all fall apart. But if he can remain untouched, remain safe, they're going to have plenty of pressure and plenty of damage, and credit where credit's due, Marimo has done exactly that, has been safe, and now they're using their priority from the Baron buff and from this Kog'Maw to get themselves multiple towers with this Baron buff and start to gain this 6,000 gold lead.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a desperation push from Yellow-Yoshi down in the bot side. Can look good on the Camille, has obviously played it a lot, but the performance hasn't really been up to, I imagine, what his own standards are at this point as he grabs that 600 gold. Doesn't really look like he's stopping either, so opting into this trade of gold, just trying to make the Camille as strong as possible as DFM continue to knock down towers.
Well, I think the thought process is, if Camille is there, what does she actually bring to a defense? The melee champion can't do a whole lot. Oh, nice.
That melee champion can do a damn lot. Forces the flash away from Akabuff as the Solar Flare drops down onto 2 as well. Van TPing in. Rocket belts forward. Gets shot away, though. And the fight's lasting long enough for Burning Core to actually get into it. It's a 1-for-1. It's a 2-for-1. Marimo doing damage on the backside as Floor is going to be dropping as well. Why is the Kog'Maw in the base? And why is he killing your entire team? He isn't. He's dead. And Burning Core punished the overstep.
My biggest question for that entire fight is, why is Marimo half health from just tower shots? No one hit him for half of the entire fight. He just tanked tower for fun and died because of it, and I'm losing my mind. Anyway, the members of VC managed to flip this one around at the end of it, but Someone keep an eye on the Kog'Maw at the end of this one. I have to call it out. I'm sorry. But the initial engage looks fine. It's a good attempt to blow up the Tristana, and the knockup is nice, but the flash away buys a lot of time. And from here, DFM are now in a situation where they just have to full commit, and the Buster Shot is there. So what happens at this point is just a little bit difficult. But look at Marimo at this point. Autos once here, Tower Shot start to come through, and it's just 1, 2. The Kog'Maw is half health. And there's nothing he can do now because everyone got split apart. He's too low.
It's an interesting approach angle.
The patented AD carry flank.
If we see Van, if Van's in that position, big fan of it. A little bit less of a fan if it's Marimo.
I'm still not a fan if he tanks 2 tower shots to half health. That's
beggars can't be choosers. Infernal Drake is on the rift now. Burning Core not really set up for it. DFM looking to pick up Soul Point, but Yellow Yoshi is on the other side of this wall. Floor is in the area. Hextech Ultimatum stolen away from him. That's going to be the Solar Flare. They're diving on top of all the members of DFM, and they're starting to deal the damage. The Kog'Maw can't really do anything, but maybe he's turning it around. And no, it's not going to happen as he pops into the GA and will be popping into the Death Realm in short order as Yellow Yoshi slices through his health bar with the scissor kicks. Goes golden. Nasuti trying to heal up, trying to do the damage, and he will be able to do it. DFM's jungler comes up clutch.
The Xin Zhao power comes through. Nasuti does plenty of damage in the tail end of that fight, and the key factor here now is the Xin Zhao might have enough time to get that mid tower. If he can crack that one, it'd be key, but instead, just taking those camps, not going to risk anything. But it looks much better here for Burning Core because they're starting to find the key carries. Look at the way the engage happens. I mean, Kog'Maw is still able to survive for a while, but it's nowhere near as long as he was when completely free hitting. Yellow Yoshi finds the flank. And unfortunately, the coordination isn't quite there because the Solar Flare does end up whiffing because of the timing on that. And he's now free hitting. But in just a second, it starts to turn around because people get on top of him. And no one can really do much. But slowly but surely, Nasuti is doing damage. He's being ignored in exchange for the Kog'Maw. And people are fighting in melee range. They're trying to run through Xin Zhao. That's not how it works. You have to go around him, not through him. Or he will go straight through you with a spear to the heart.
I tell you what, that Chempunk Chainsword cutting the healing down by 60% was actually impactful. Yeah. The Kingslayer from Creative did absolutely nothing. We can see it there. Yeah. 6,000. That is 7,000 damage in that fight on the Xin Zhao. And it's huge. Because if Burning Core are able to continue winning that fight, they can walk down mid lane, start to take a couple of towers, maybe crack an inhibitor. But it's an absolutely hero play from the DFM jungler.
And that's why I mentioned before, though, you can't go through him. You have to go around him. That's why the Camille flank was so good to begin with. But the CC chain wasn't there onto the Kog'Maw, so he didn't go down immediately. Was able to deal damage, and at the same time store distance, because the members tried to run through Xin Zhao, so he was just hitting people, and while he was being ignored...
He's the highest level in the game, look! Level 16 on the city. You shouldn't be able to do this.
Yeah, he's a beast. It's not anyone's jungle, this is his rift. This is just his. And as such, you've got to wonder whether or not they're just going to try and burn the Baron, because look at the Kog'Maw damage.
Yeah, it's just another camp for him, honestly. Yellow Yoshi's not even in the area. Already dropped down to 5,000 HP on that floor. Does have flash, could get over the wall and look for the steal. He needs to get this happening, but of course, you can't take anything away from Nasuti as the Baron is picked up by DFM. Burning Core trying to get towers on the backside. Yellow Yoshi took down that inhib tower. Akabuff grabs the mid lane at tier 2, but obviously it's nowhere near worth.
I have to play devil's advocate, though, from the side of DFM, because I feel... Hang on a second, I don't feel anything for Fujimoto.
Now, I think Fujimoto is feeling the cold embrace of death as Creative picks him up, and this is good for Burning Core, but it might not be for long as Nasuti bops them back. Yellow Yoshi gets over the wall, and the chase comes out from the Xin Zhao. Hextech Ultimatum not back as well. It's another kill for Nasuti as DFM get the response on the play.
Yeah, so it works out there for the side of DFM overall. The issue I had with the initial play, though, is I feel as though, can you imagine a situation where that flip goes differently, where Floor ends up picking that up? Suddenly, you've got the Camille splitting bot, you've got the Tristana hitting mid lane. If that doesn't go your way, the game is suddenly in a very difficult situation. I feel as though with Shockwave available, with the Braum Glacial Fissures available, you can deny that at steal to begin with from Floor. So DFM, they get the right result, but I think the method is slightly off, and it doesn't matter overall, though, because they do have the Infernal Soul spawning, and they now have pressure to do whatever they want.
Oh no. Oh no.
Focus.
Akabuff can't read.
I'm worried.
So dear viewer, Infinity Edge is a pretty good item, late game on AD carries, but it does require you to have 60% crit chance to get that bonus damage. Yeah, this is rough. And this isn't the position where you want to be in when it's the crucial fight around the Infernal Drake happening in 5 seconds time.
And he's building GA next as well.
It's an unfortunate scenario. TP being channeled here by Van to make his way over to this fight. Actually, with 5 members of DFM around the Infernal Drake, Yellow Yoshi is making his way over. Burning Court need an absolute miracle to win this fight. 3,000, and the Drake still comes out from Floor. No Infernal Soul for you, DFM, but the fight might just go in your favor as you've already picked up 4 members of Burning Core. Akabuff, that Infinity Edge does nothing. It's not the Infinity Gauntlet, just being chased down by the Cogmore hits. It's a pentakill for Marimo.
Pentakill for Marimo. He's basically untouched, and once you do get yourself that Infernal Dragon, it means absolutely nothing if the Cogmore can free hit. If you can't take the fight, then nothing's going to go right. You're going to end up losing your base tonight, and that's going to be absolutely everything that DFM needed.
Yeah, taking it down the Nexus towers, taking down the Nexus, and DFM tied themselves up with Burning Core at 3-2 after an immaculate performance.
Yeah, great stuff from the side of DFM. They end up picking up that win, as you say, and, you know, I was a critic. I won't lie about that. I was cynical about the draft. I thought that, realistically speaking, this Cogmore cannot free hit, but
yeah,
they were able to find the angles they needed to. They were able to keep the Cogmore safe, and it wasn't just the Cogmore that was a factor, though, was it? The Xin Zhao performance was ridiculous in this game. The damage, the farming, the levels, the XP, the itemization. I don't want to talk about Infinity Edge itemization today, but apart from that, everything was great there from the side of DFM.
Well, we do actually have a replay of that final fight, recollect, where DFM were able to claim it. Oh, the steal went over to Floor, but it ultimately didn't matter.
I mean, just look at Marimo. He's just hitting, and, you know, the Solar Flare lands, but this Cogmore is about 10 champions away from everyone else, and no one is touching him. The only one who touched him was Leona twice, with Solar Flare and Q. No one else touched him the entire fight, and as such, he deals tons of damage, and Marimo is the whole point of the composition, is going to deal plenty of damage, and is going to get himself that pentakill.
That living artillery right at the end to finish it off. Honestly, disgusting performance by him. By Nasuti as well. We talked about DFM at the start of the day, or at the start of our cast together, not really being a team which had any of these standout players. And I think we have found a couple of them today.
Yeah, and it's big, because that is what you need when you are in the clutch and you're in a pinch and you need something to bring you back. You need these kind of players and these kind of performances. So the fact that we're seeing it right now before we enter, the final day and the final sort of moments where everything is important in this tournament, it's good to see that they've already got that foundation set up.
And I tell you what, they are going to have a spicy matchup for our Game 1 tomorrow, which is going to be brought to you by Counterfeit and Nymera. V3 Academy facing off against Detention FocusMe Academy in our Game 1 of the day. Recollect, that is looking like a pretty spicy matchup all of a sudden.
Yeah, it suddenly has a lot more implications as well for our standings too, because of what this could mean for DFM is suddenly they go from what was a very lackluster record where they were realistically one of the lower teams in the standings. Yeah. Suddenly they're fighting, V3. They're fighting for those top sort of spots. And that could be massive for avoiding certain matchups until later on down the line as well. So we'll have to see how well they can do in that one. But if they can keep what happened today going, they could be doing pretty well for themselves.
A DFM having a poor start to a league and then turning it around to become an indomitable force. I think I've seen that storyline before. But we will have to wait until tomorrow to see how it plays out. Recollect, thank you very much for joining me on the cast test. We are actually able to grab the standings very briefly, popping over to those as we see V3 Academy right at the top, CGA in second place, 4-1. Then we've got the Hawks, DFM Academy tied up with Burning Core Academy now after that game. Then Axis, Sengoku, and Rascal Jesters bringing up the bottom of the table. But that is still very variable, very up in the air until the rest of our games have been played. Recollect, thank you very much for joining me on the caster desk today. Thank you as well to Initialize and Mars Swan for their excellent cast earlier on in the day. Join us tomorrow at 8 AM UK time as Counterfeit and Nymera will be bringing you our first match of that day, which of course is DFM versus V3. I've been Middlecott. This has been the LJL, officially unofficial. We'll see you tomorrow.